Chapter 1 Introduction. When death was a public spectacle long before the age of digital streaming, television, and real-time news coverage, society's appetite for drama, justice, and punishment was satisfied in the town square. In the absence of modern entertainment, public executions served as both moral instruction and mass amusement. They were intended to project power, deter crime, and maintain order, but they also revealed something darker about the human psyche, the *** fascination with watching others suffer ***. Public executions were far from isolated or clinical affairs. They were deliberately staged, often ritualized events designed to capture attention, ignite emotion, and shape public opinion. From medieval Europe to imperial China, from revolutionary France to colonial America, executions were open-air dramas with high emotional stakes, meticulously designed to showcase the rule of law, or, in many cases, the brutal power of the ruling class. These events weren't limited to a handful of officials and onlookers. Thousands of spectators, men, women, and children, would assemble hours before the execution. Many traveling from nearby towns, bringing food baskets, and treating the event like a festival. Shops closed early, and businesses adjusted hours so their workers could attend. Vendors surrounded the execution site, selling roasted nuts, cider, and souvenir pamphlets. Children perched on shoulders. Musicians sometimes played in the background. This wasn't just justice, it was theater. The transformation from punishment to performance initially meant as an example to instill fear. Executions gradually transformed into social rituals, moments of shared spectacle and collective emotion. In major cities, the executioner's arrival became a moment of drama. The condemned's final words were anticipated like dialogue in a tragedy. Applause, gasps, and even jeers became part of the audience's response. These events satisfied multiple desires: moral confirmation, emotional catharsis, and raw, voyeuristic curiosity. As the macabre appeal of executions grew, so did efforts to manage and profit from the experience. Viewing platforms were erected. Ticket systems were introduced to control and monetize crowd flow. Elite viewers began to pay for prime seating or enclosed viewing boxes, while the poor gathered in mobs behind barricades or on rooftops. Like a modern-day stadium or theater, executions developed zones of privilege. The emergence of an execution economy, unspoken but undeniable. A system of commerce grew around these deaths, a thriving economy of execution that benefited various groups. Local vendors sold food and trinkets. Print shops circulated cheaply, made pamphlets featuring the condemned's biography, confessions, and final words, sometimes exaggerated for drama. Officials and prison staff found ways to earn from access passes or seating arrangements. Artists and engravers created images of the execution scene for sale afterward. Landowners near popular execution sites even charged for rooftop viewing or rented out windows. For the state, public executions were a double-edged sword. They reinforced authority and control, but also became commodified, turning acts of death into public festivals. This tension between justice and spectacle, morality and profit, is what this article will explore in depth. Why it still matters. Understanding this phenomenon isn't just about history. It's about examining how violence, power, and profit intersect and how public institutions have historically monetized control. Even today, echoes of these dynamics persist in how crime, punishment, and suffering are portrayed in media. This chapter introduces a critical question. When punishment becomes performance and death becomes entertainment, what does that say about society? In the chapters ahead, we'll unpack the evolution of ticketed executions, the social psychology behind them, the machinery that profited from them, and the legacy they left behind. Chapter 2. Origins of Execution as Public Theater, long before the idea of monetizing execution was born, the concept of death in the public eye was already firmly established. In the earliest known civilizations, including ancient Rome, imperial China, the Persian Empire, and even early Mesopotamian societies, public punishment served as a powerful symbolic event. These were not merely justice-driven procedures. They were ritualized displays of state dominance, conducted for mass consumption. Justice with an audience. The goal was twofold: to deliver punishment and to do so as visibly and dramatically as possible. The belief was that fear was most effective when it was seen, not just heard, about. Executions thus became elaborate, emotionally charged displays. In Rome, for instance, criminals and prisoners of war were often torn apart by animals in the Colosseum, while thousands cheered from the stands. In China's Ming and Qing dynasties, the horrifying death by 1,000 cuts was performed. In public markets, these events weren't improvised. They were carefully choreographed, timed, and often announced in advance. The condemned person wasn't always a nameless criminal. Sometimes they were political dissidents, prisoners of war, or rebels, and the more controversial the victim, the greater the turnout. These public events allowed governments to consolidate control, sending the message, "Defy us, and this will be your fate," and everyone will watch it happen. Early signs of spectacles. The centuries rolled on. Executions gradually absorbed elements of theater and storytelling. In medieval Europe, the condemned might be led through town in a wagon, jeered at by crowds, accompanied by drums or church bells. Executioners, often feared but also revered, wore distinct uniforms and carried specialized weapons. Their arrivals signaled the climax of the event. People came not just for justice, but for the experience. Citizens would dress up for the occasion, meet friends and family, and even bring children to witness the moral lesson firsthand. It became a form of civic participation and, in some cases, even moral entertainment. The more dramatic the method, hanging, burning, beheading, or quartering, the more drawn out and emotional the event. Execution as ritual. There was also a religious or mystical undertone. Public punishment was often accompanied by *** prayers, chanting, or blessings ***, and the dying words of the condemned were given great importance. Some believed that a criminal's final words could reveal truth, remorse, or divine punishment. Execution, in this context, was not just the end of a life, it was a public transition between sin and judgment, crime and consequence. Short, the early history of executions reveals that the desire to watch punishment unfold is as old as civilization itself. The shift from punishment to performance wasn't an accident, it was built into the very nature of state justice, and eventually, it became profitable. Chapter 3. The invention of paid viewing ***. As societies grew more complex and urban populations expanded during the 17th and 18th centuries, execution crowds became harder to control and more commercially exploitable. What had long been a free, open spectacle began to change shape, particularly in Western Europe. Moving the gallows indoors. In major cities like *** London, Paris, and Vienna, ***, authorities began moving executions from chaotic public squares into semi-enclosed courtyards, often within the walls of jails or justice buildings. This decision was driven partly by concerns about crowd control and partly by a growing discomfort with disorderly mass gatherings. But this restriction of access also created a new opportunity: exclusivity. If space was limited and demand was high, access could be monetized. A tiered viewing experience. What followed was the emergence of tiered pricing and informal ticketing systems, very much resembling the class-based entertainment models seen in theaters and sports venues today. Here's how it typically worked. Street-level standing area, ***. Crowds could still gather outside gates or climb nearby walls and trees for a glimpse. This was often free or required a bribe to the guards for better positioning. Interior, courtyard balconies, ***, reserved for paying attendees. These included journalists, local elites, and curious onlookers willing to spend for a better view. Prices could vary depending on the notoriety of the condemned. Private viewing rooms and windows. Wealthy or politically connected individuals could rent indoor rooms overlooking the execution site, complete with food, wine, and comfortable seating. In Paris, these were sometimes part of residential buildings adjacent to public guillotine squares. The prices were not standardized, but they were dynamic, rising sharply when the condemned was famous or when the crime had shocked the public. Scalping and speculation. As with any popular event, resale markets emerged. People who had reserved access to a high-demand execution might sell their tickets at a markup. This was especially common in London's Newgate prison executions, where influential criminals, such as traitors, serial killers, or nobility, were put to death. Scalping could become so profitable that local officials and wardens were often accused of colluding in the sale of access. Some even printed souvenir tickets, especially during the French Revolution, where guillotine executions became near-daily events in Paris and were often treated like theater seasons. From justice to commerce with tickets came ***, expectations of quality, ***. Audiences who paid for access expected a visible, dramatic, and even emotionally satisfying execution. Complaints arose if the execution was botched, too quick, or lacked ceremony. This dynamic, where the public felt entitled to a certain experience in return for payment, marked a decisive shift. Justice had become commodified. The condemned became ***, actors in a final, unwilling performance. ***, and executioners were judged not just on their efficiency, but on their stagecraft. Death, once sacred or solemn, had become a product. Chapter 4. VIP sections and social hierarchies. Not everyone who came to witness an execution stood shoulder to shoulder in the street, like modern sporting events or theater productions. Executions developed a tiered spectator system. reflecting broader class divisions and social power. In England, particularly during the 18th and early 19th centuries, the courtyard of Newgate Prison in London became infamous for its reserved viewing booths. These wooden structures were erected on surrounding rooftops or directly overlooking the gallows. Access to these elevated viewing positions was not free. They were either sold, rented, or given by favor to society's upper crust, aristocrats, clergy, wealthy merchants, and political elites. These privileged guests enjoyed a very different experience from the crowd below. Their spots offered unobstructed views of the scaffold, shelter from weather, physical separation from the rowdy crowds, and security for personal safety. Some booths were decorated or temporarily furnished, and refreshments were often provided. In elite social circles, to be seen attending an execution was a symbol of power and detachment, a chilling reminder that those in control were spectators, not subjects, of the state's violence. Executions as networking events beyond curiosity or amusement, these VIP sections also served a social function. Much like high society opera boxes, they became spaces for mingling, business deals, and status signaling. Letters and diaries from the time record how prominent figures would invite friends or clients to join them, further entrenching the event's role as a bizarre but accepted part of upper-class social life. For the condemned, this added another layer of humiliation. Their final moments were being witnessed, sometimes judged, by the same elites who ruled over them. Chapter 5. Merchandising and street commerce outside the execution site. Another kind of stage came to life, a bustling marketplace of death. These events attracted not just spectators, but entrepreneurs and hustlers, all eager to capitalize on the crowd and the occasion. Street vendors and artisans sold an array of morbid merchandise, including food and drink, ale, roasted nuts, pies, sweetmeat, souvenirs, handkerchiefs dipped in the blood of the condemned, sometimes faked, mock nooses, wooden gallows, miniatures, printed execution ballads, cheaply made broadsides that combined rhyming verses with a crude biography of the condemned, often exaggerating their crimes or repentance, woodcuts and illustrations, mass-produced drawings of the execution scene, often sold moments after the deed was done. Some cities even had dedicated stalls or licenses for vendors who specialized in execution-related goods. The state occasionally taxed or regulated this commerce, turning it into yet another revenue stream. The atmosphere resembled that of a carnival or fair, a strange, dissonant blend of commerce, cruelty, and community. Chapter 6. Printed tickets and scandals. As executions became more organized and more exclusive, the use of printed tickets emerged in some regions. These tickets often included the date and time of the execution, name of the condemned, assigned seating or section, occasionally poetry, art, or official stamps, signifying authenticity. These tickets served a dual purpose. They regulated crowd access and doubled as collectibles or keepsakes. Some were mounted in scrapbooks, displayed in homes, or traded among collectors. The dark side of the system: inevitably, such commodification led to corruption and scandal. In France, particularly during the Reign of Terror, guillotine executions became so frequent that they were treated almost like seasonal theater. Officials were caught hoarding or forging tickets, then selling them at inflated prices to eager spectators. Journalists exposed these schemes, triggering public outrage. The government attempted to crack down on profiteering, but the desire to witness executions and to profit from that desire was difficult to suppress. Even after regulations were tightened, backdoor sales and elite access continued. Chapter 7. Families, children, and the normalization of horror. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of public executions was the normalization of death as a family outing, with no age restrictions or cultural taboos strong enough to prevent it. Parents routinely brought children to witness hangings, beheadings, or burnings. For many, this was seen as a moral lesson, a warning about the consequences of sin or crime. Some parents even believed it was their duty to expose their children to the harsh realities of justice. Children were told to watch closely, remember what they saw, and never end up like the poor soul on the scaffold. But the psychological cost of this casual exposure to violent death was profound. Children laughed, cheered, or wept, not fully understanding what they were witnessing, yet absorbing it all the same. Over time, repeated exposure led to descent. In some cases, it fueled macabre fascinations or fantasies of violence. Philosophers and reformers would later point to this phenomenon as evidence of society's moral decay, that a culture capable of selling popcorn at an execution was one that had blurred the line between justice and bloodlust. Chapter 8. Public backlash and ethical turning points. By the late 18th and 19th centuries, voices of dissent began to grow louder. As Enlightenment values spread, so did questions about the morality of public executions, particularly their commercialization. Critics asked, if the justice system is meant to uphold dignity and humanity, why are executions treated like entertainment? Intellectual and religious critiques writers and philosophers like Victor Hugo, Cesare Beccaria, and Charles Dickens decried public executions as barbaric relics. Clergy and religious thinkers began emphasizing repentance and mercy over vengeance, and spectacle. Educators and reformers warned of the psychological damage being done to children and communities. Newspapers published scathing editorials, likening public executions to ancient Roman bloods. Some claimed the crowd behavior, drunkenness, cheering, jeering. Chapter 9. The End of Ticketed Justice, ****, as the 20th century unfolded. A significant shift occurred in the public conscience, one that redefined the line between justice and spectacle. After centuries of public executions being normalized, celebrated, and monetized, governments across Europe and the Americas began to dismantle the infrastructure of public death. From public squares to prison walls, the decision to end public executions wasn't made overnight. It was the result of growing ethical pressure, philosophical change, and media criticism. Reformers argued that public killings encouraged violence, corrupted moral sensibilities, and turned the state into a performer, not a protector. By the early 1900s, most developed nations, including France, the United Kingdom, and the United States, had formally outlawed public executions. Executions were now performed privately, inside prisons, and were typically witnessed only by a select group. Court officials, religious representatives, law enforcement, journalists in limited numbers in some jurisdictions. Even journalists were eventually barred from attending, with only a written account released afterward. The spectacle was no more. The state had closed the curtain on public death. The disappearance of the death economy. With executions moved out of the public eye, the execution marketplace collapsed. No more vendors, no more souvenir broadsides or blood-soaked tokens. The ticketing system, once a mechanism for crowd control and elite access, vanished completely. Old printed execution tickets and ballads became collector's items, studied by historians and housed in museums and academic archives. What was once a thriving economy rooted in death, now served as a chilling reminder of a society that once treated justice as theater. But the end of ticketed executions was not just a moral milestone, it was deeply political. Governments, increasingly conscious of public image and international perception, no longer wanted to be seen as merchants of state-sanctioned death. The shift to private executions was also about optics, control, and reputation. Some authoritarian states continued to execute publicly well into the 20th or even 21st century, using the act as a tool of fear and control, but globally, the trend moved toward secrecy and solemnity. Chapter 10. Final Thoughts, Entertainment, Economics, and Ethics. Looking back at the era of ticketed executions, we confront an uncomfortable truth. Humans once paid to watch each other die. What seems grotesque and unthinkable today was, for centuries, accepted, even celebrated, as entertainment, as morality play, and as commerce. The legacy of spectacle. The concept of ticketed justice leaves us with lingering questions. Why did we enjoy watching others suffer? How did we justify turning death into a form of public amusement? What does this say about the relationship between power, punishment, and the people? This dark chapter in history forces us to examine our own systems. Although public hangings and guillotines are gone, the desire for spectacle has not disappeared. Reality TV thrives on humiliation. True crime podcasts dissect real murders. Social media sometimes becomes a stage for real-time human suffering. The difference: now the ticket is digital, a click, a view, a subscription. Ethics in the age of entertainment. The story of ticketed executions is not just about the past, it's a mirror held up to the present. It challenges us to draw the line between awareness and exploitation, between justice and performance. In every era, there is a temptation to turn violence into content, especially when there's money to be made. But history shows us the price of this impulse: dehumanization, corruption, and moral erosion. The gallows are silent, but the questions remain. Though the public scaffold has disappeared, its ghost lingers in how we process punishment. In media, the executioner may no longer raise his axe before a cheering crowd, but society still wrestles with how and why we consume the pain of others. In remembering the era of ticketed executions, we are reminded that justice should never be for sale, and when it becomes performance, we must ask, who benefits, who suffers, and what part do we play in the spectacle?